you have to almost get to the place when you're doing this work to stop believing that anything that's happening in your present day life is just the present day life. Some people say 80% of everything that's happening in our lives is really remnants from the past. But the key thing is if you keep pulling out your thorns, then those remnants of the past stop bothering you so much. Hey everyone, it's Deb, and I wanted to share a recap of a recent conversation that I had with a client, and we were talking about golf. This applies to a lot of things, but I still think that it's going to be a super helpful way for us to look at how we can look at every single thing that's happening in our lives as something that we can be empowered to change, that we don't actually have to feel stuck in patterns that we think are just normal. I think that what my client was dealing with was that he was feeling like it's normal to play golf and be frustrated because it's a frustrating game. It's normal to go to the driving range, hit some balls, not do well, come back and kind of feel like you're in a little bit of a bad mood for a half hour, an hour. It's normal to future catastrophize and think, oh no, this means my game is going to be bad tomorrow, or maybe I'm losing my skill around playing golf. And to kind of just get sucked into that, that's normal. And so then I just have to work my way through it. And eventually I'll find my way back into a better place. And I bet you that you could think of other places. I mean, that just happens to be his example, is a golf example, but another person might be talking about going out with friends for lunch and that your feelings were hurt by some things. And that's just kind of normal. Like, of course, everybody says things and you have to kind of work through it and get over it. The way my client describes it is that he would be out there golfing and he would start off with this optimistic idea of what it was going to be like. And then as he starts to not do as well as he wants to do, he starts getting a little bit more frustrated. And of course, that doesn't help either, right? And by the time that he's done with that golfing round or that session at the driving range, he's pretty much just feeling bad in many ways. And so he says that he's feeling bad that he didn't do well. He's maybe beating himself up over it. He's having some regrets. He's having some fears. And these things get into his head. And then he said that he'll start to notice what he's doing. And then what he'll do is rationalize it with himself. He'll tell him why he shouldn't be thinking those things, and even positive things that are really, really helpful, like remembering that he's had bad golf games before and done okay later, that it doesn't mean this is forever and that this is probably a temporary thing. Okay, now you've got that clear, right? So I want you to think of your own example of this. But as we were talking about it, because of what I do in the Whole Soul Way, I wanted to help him to consider the possibility that everything that is upsetting in the present day has a connection to the past. Now, when I say that, I just want you to know I don't mean you need to go excavate every single bit of your childhood. I don't actually think so. In fact, for me personally, I don't have a lot of memories from my childhood, and I have managed to do a tremendous amount of healing without having to go into the past for every single thing. The key thing is to recognize that what's happening in the present moment is touching on a wound from the past. Some people would call this emotionally triggering the past. And it's waking up something in us and touching something that we then learned to cope with. So as a child, we learned this painful, uncomfortable feeling isn't good. And so we're going to do something else instead. And so oftentimes we have all these coping mechanisms that are rooted in us not wanting to feel those uncomfortable feelings. So what I asked him was, first if he was willing to consider the possibility that this was rooted in his past. And to be honest with you, he kind of did say in so many words, I don't really think it does. I think this is just normal stuff that you have to deal with in life. And I was like, yeah, but see, this is the challenge we're dealing with is that we've become acclimated sort of toward things happening that are not good, let's just say, and just kind of saying, this is just part of life. But what if it's not? Like, what if he actually could go to the driving range, go out on the golf course, and just be joyful? There are people who do that. They are playing a really bad game of golf, but they still just are happy and having fun and they just take it as it is. So it's not like it's impossible, but the question is maybe it's impossible for him at this point because from his standpoint, he is like, well, that's not going to work for me because he's so connected to this other way of being. So he did agree, since it was a coaching session and since he's committed to doing things the whole soul way, that he would at least explore it with me. What he did say was the reason why he doesn't think it's connected to his childhood is because he said, for the most part, he was pretty good at things. If he wanted to do something and he committed to it, he got good at it. So golf is frustrating for him because he wants to be better at it and he's struggling with it. Even though he's actually a pretty good golfer, he wants to be better. So I said, well, so what if the possibility is that when you were a child, you learned that you have to be good at things, and that if you're not good at things, it puts you at risk. Maybe friends would tease you, or you wouldn't be accepted, or you wouldn't be um, picked for the volleyball team during PE or something. Maybe there was a way that you learned that it's actually quite dangerous to not be good at something. Now, I use the word dangerous because I think about it as a child, it can feel really threatening if our sense of belonging is threatened. If our parents are upset with us because maybe we didn't get good grades or because we let our father down when we were playing baseball or something. And so, because belonging is so important, being accepted is really integral to our survival as a child. There could be an imprint in him that has him feeling that when he's not good at something, it brings up something more than present day stuff. So the present day thing is touching on the wound of the child. Now, I know it's hard to imagine this is true, and you might think this is a hard way to live. I don't want to live this way. Just, deal with the struggle and get over it. But what if you can instead get to the root of it? Michael Singer talks about the thorn, that there's a thorn that gets put in us, an emotional thorn. And that thorn is there and it keeps getting touched and rubbed up against every time something like this happens. But imagine what would happen if we could take out the thorn, if we could find the original thorn. Now, again, that doesn't mean you need to go back and remember all the times when mommy and daddy did these things or when your friends did these things and make a list of them and sit in your sadness over the ways you were disappointed or hurt. The key thing is what if you could be with yourself as if you were that little boy in his case and and give to the little boy in you what you needed when you were little. So he's still a little unsure about this, and he's still feeling kind of like, I'm not sure if that's true, but I guess I could see the possibility that some part of me did feel maybe wounded by something that someone else said to me, or that I got this story that I have to be good at things. And if I'm not good at things, then it's kind of a risky thing for me. My friendships are threatened, or my parents' approval is threatened. So he could see it because he could see that, first of all, his behaviors now, but also he just kind of knew based on his childhood. So then the question is, if that is true, then it would make sense that when he's not living up to his expectations, which are pretty high as an adult, that it could be triggering something from the past. So he's kind of like, okay, let's just say that's true. So then we proceed to talk about that moment when he's on the golf course or on the driving range and what he does in that situation. So what we discovered is that he starts getting really hard on himself. He starts kind of beating himself up. Like, what's wrong with you? Come on. That was such a stupid thing that you just did. That was just so dumb. You know not to do that. He kind of whacks his club on the ground and he gets irritated and frustrated with himself. And he starts to say, like, you can do better than this. You know how to do this. You just learned this the other day. You were doing great the other day. Come on, you could figure it out. And he's putting all this pressure on himself and he's beating himself up and he's telling himself everything that basically says, kind of, you suck. You need to do better. So, of course, that's just piling on. Now, imagine if he thought of that little boy, the little boy who learned at a very young age, at a very vulnerable age. Imagine if he was like 4 years old, maybe 2 years old, and he learned that he has to be good at things or else he loses love and approval. He feels scared and he feels unsafe. So he has to put a lot of pressure on himself to do better. So imagine he's there feeling this little boy. He's powerless. He's trying to figure out the world. And all of a sudden he realizes that there's pressure. He has to do better. And this is me just imagining the little boy. Okay, this is me imagining it for you as I did for my client, just to allow him to see the possibility that inside of him is this little boy that feels kind of scared. And he doesn't really know what to do, but he's pretty sure that he has to do better. And one of the things he learns is that if he can be demanding to himself, if he can sort of beat himself up, then he can prevent other people doing that to him. That if he's hard on himself and he expects nothing but the best, then maybe he won't disappoint people. Maybe he won't have to deal with that humiliation and the rejection and the embarrassment of other people pointing out where he didn't do great. Maybe he doesn't have to feel the feelings of their rejection or their disapproval or their disappointment. So it's actually less painful to beat himself up. It's less painful to be mad at himself. It's less painful than the possibility of other people doing it. Now, you wonder, yeah, but he's an adult now. He doesn't have that. He was by himself on the driving range. Nobody was saying anything to him. Probably not many people would ever say any of those things to him now because he's actually a pretty good golfer. And, he's a grown man. And most of the people he hangs out with are other adults who probably would more likely cheer him on and, maybe just say like funny things and not exclude him or not decide not to be his friend anymore because he didn't golf well that day. He knows that intellectually. He doesn't realize that something happened in him, which I'm not sure if this is the exact example of this, but it's this concept of introjection, where he thinks he's hard on himself and he thinks he does this stuff because that's just how I am. But actually what he did was took on the words of other people. So teachers and coaches and siblings and parents and friends, they became the inner voice. So he thinks this is just normal to have this high of expectation, to beat himself up, to be mad at himself for a few hours afterwards, to future catastrophize and worry about what this is going to play out as in the future and how we can prevent it from happening and all of the things that happen. He doesn't realize that that's actually just something that happened to him as a little child, that he learned all these coping mechanisms to deal with other people's disappointment, to deal with being excluded, to deal with being judged or criticized, to deal with disapproval, to deal with the risk of not belonging. All these ways he learned to cope, he thinks are just normal. He just thinks they're normal. And he doesn't even realize, because the wound that got touched is so deep that it's like it gets touched and there's almost this if then statement, like in programming, there's no space in between. The minute that it gets touched, his brain goes into all these coping mechanisms. Better start to beat himself up, do better, you can do better. He starts going down this path, and then he's now kind of in this like yucky place of feeling bad and future catastrophizing. Takes him another hour, maybe a day, maybe 2 days to get out of it, whatever it is. He thinks that's just his normal way of being. That's what everybody does. But actually, a little wound, maybe a big wound, got touched. And how would he possibly deal with that situation? What would he do? What could he do differently? So the first thing you'd have to do differently is you'd have to believe that the first thing that happened was that some type of wound got poked, that a finger pushed on an emotional thorn. Ow. And that thorn in this case was like, oh no, I'm not good enough. I need to do better. And the shame and the scared feelings and the anxiety and the worry and all of that comes up. Oh. But because of coping mechanisms, we don't feel those first feelings, or we do, but we then mistake them as something to do with the present moment. So maybe he did feel when he was hitting that ball and it just wasn't going where he wanted, he might have felt some of those feelings, some shame, fear, humiliation, embarrassment, worry. Those things may have been there, but he attributed those to something else. He didn't attribute them to the young little boy that he was. He attributed them to present day things. And it's like you have to almost get to the place when you're doing this work to stop believing that anything that's happening in your present day life is just the present day life. Some people say 80% of everything that's happening in our lives is really remnants from the past. But the key thing is if you keep pulling out your thorns, then those remnants of the past stop bothering you so much. But we just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again because at some level, well, most of us haven't been taught this, but we might not even believe it. You have to believe it first. You have to say, I might not fully believe it, but I'm going to give it a try because guess what? If I could stop suffering as much by getting to the original pain, sounds like a good idea to me. Before I talk about what you can actually do about it, let's talk about the other thing that's happening in this. Okay? If you didn't notice it, what started to happen when he wasn't doing great? He started beating up on himself, AKA his inner child. So he starts rejecting his inner child. He starts being mean to his inner child. Is that what his inner child really needed? I mean, if you've done any inner child work, you know that's not what he needs. His inner child needs to know that the adult him, my client, is there for him, that the world is rough and a lot of people aren't going to be there for us. But inner child work is the practice of building a relationship with our inner child parts and loving them and caring for them in the ways that they didn't receive when they were younger, or that they may have received, but they didn't always receive because, life is around other people who can't always fulfill our emotional needs. And knowing that we will fulfill those emotional needs, we won't beat ourselves up, we will love ourselves, we will support ourselves. But here's the thing, at some level, he learned that he can't trust that, well, first, that he can't trust that he would be loved in the world. But ultimately, he has to love himself first. But even more so, he can't trust that he's gonna work hard and do better if he doesn't demand it of himself. So he at some level learned that the only way he's going to be good enough for other people to be approved of is if he is demanding, mean to himself, a drill sergeant, beating himself up, expecting nothing but the best. Because if he doesn't do that and he misses the mark, then it is a bad situation for that little boy. This is what we would call a protector part. There's a protector part in there that believes that I have to do this to you. I have to beat you up. I can't be happy. Like there's some level where a young part of him believes I can't be happy here if I'm not doing well, because at a core level, my survival depends on me being the best at this. My survival depends on me being so good that no one else could judge me. At some level, my belonging, which is deeply connected to our survival, is threatened if I am not doing the best. If I'm just having fun, like he probably learned as a little boy, you can't just have fun. You need a purpose and meaning, and you have to work hard and achieve your goals and strive. Just going to the golf course and having fun. And by the way, he is having more fun and he lets himself off the hook a lot more. But I think this is a big one for him. I think there's a thorn in him that really does need to come out. And imagine if he does not attach the same way as he has been to that old pain and wound, because he starts to reparent himself. And so that's the key in the moment or afterwards, as soon as he catches it, to be with himself. So imagine if what he does in that moment is he just stops for 1 second, and maybe he's on the golf course and he doesn't feel he can put his hand on his chest and his heart and be with himself. But I'm going to tell you, that's what he needs to do at some point, ideally right then. Say he's right there. He's on the driving range and he's swinging that club and he's thinking he's not doing well and he's starting to beat himself up. As soon as he catches it, he needs to take a breath. And as he takes that breath, remember that he is speaking to an inner child, a young part of himself when he says those things. And that there's a little boy inside of him who is scared and really wants to know that he's loved by the adult. And that it doesn't matter what he does. It doesn't matter if he's awful at golf or if he's playing and running around swinging the club and just laughing, or if he's amazing, that my client will love him no matter what, that he will love him no matter what he does, that his love is not in question. And I know it's hard because he learned as a little boy that your love is conditional, or at least your acceptance is conditional, your approval, validation, accolades, they're conditional. So he's now having to retrain his brain and his body and his nervous system that it's not dangerous to not be good. It's not dangerous to not be the best. It's not dangerous to enjoy something just for the sake of enjoying it, not for the sake of striving to be the best. Are you picking up what I'm putting down here? Because this is not just my golfing client. This is all of us. There are countless places where we are absolutely so committed to our old stories because we don't realize they're old stories. We think they are the truth of the present moment. So the thing he has to do is start to work toward noticing it. That's the first thing, because noticing it, first he has to believe it, right? Okay, so now he already believes it. He does believe it. So then we said, okay, the next time that you're out there, probably the driving range is the best place to practice this because the golf course might be hard. He's usually golfing with other people, but wherever he can, as soon as he notices that he's not doing well and something happens, and we're not sure what it is, you don't even have to know exactly the moment, but you notice your behaviors. Oh, I'm starting to yell at myself and be mad at myself. I'm starting to feel anger rising up. I can feel myself feeling like I'm not doing a good job and I'm not having fun. When that happens, as quickly as he can, to take a breath and notice and remind himself that he has an inner child and he has these protector parts, and they're all very activated right now, that there's a thorn that has been touched. And to remember, oh, yeah, that's a thorn. We are feeling scared from being a little child that was powerless. Maybe saying to our child, we're not powerless anymore, honey. I'm with you and I love you, even if we're not good at golf. And I'm not going to beat you up anymore. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm so sorry that I spent all these years proactively beating you up because I thought that if I beat you up, we could avoid other people being disappointed in us and disapproving of us, that we would maybe keep friendships and be worthy. I love you. You are worthy. Now, is he going to remember to say all those things? Nope. If he can just take a breath and say, I see you. Oh my gosh, the thorn got touched. That would be huge. If he would say, um, I love you no matter what, or I'm with you, you're not alone, that'd be huge. But it's not a fast one and done. It is once that thorn comes out. But to start with, we have to just work on changing that pattern. The pattern needs to be changed by remembering that this is not the present day, that this is actually touching a thorn from the past, and say, I am here. I am not going to leave you alone. Now, some people would say, now just pull out the thorn. Well, what do you mean pull out the thorn? The thorn comes out gently. It's almost like, imagine that you've got this thing and it's poking at it, right? And right now it's like festering. And all we keep on doing is adding to the inflammation, just putting more inflammation in there. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to say, I see the wound. It's red and it's hot and it hurts. And I'm not going to just ignore it anymore. We're going to tend to the wound. We're going to put maybe our hands on it. Maybe we're going to put a little bit of like soothing medicine or something. What is the medicine? I don't know. What's his medicine? Maybe the medicine is the reassurance that you're okay no matter what. Maybe the medicine is changing the way he golfs when he's out there, starting to say positive affirmations to himself, like, you're doing great. Look at the way you just did that. That was amazing. And he starts talking to him nicely. Maybe he starts having a smile on his face and saying, like, I'm going to just golf and have fun. And these are pattern interrupts that start to change things. And the key thing is that the actions that we change, so the things we do different from the way we do them typically. And keep in mind, the things we do typically are more on autopilot. They're an automatic reaction coming from touching the wound. So if we start to say, I feel that, and we're going to do something different, we start to prove to our protector parts and to our inner child that it's safe to do it different. I often say, like, we didn't die, because at some level, at some primal level, our survival being dependent on our parents and their approval actually threatens our life. At some deep level, we don't even consciously know it, but our fear brain goes into, we could die. We could be ostracized. We could be banished. We could be abandoned. So you better get in line and do the things that are going to keep you alive. So when you're an adult and you start to change things, there's some part of you, I know this seems hyperbolic, but it's really not. There's some part of you that actually thinks, I could die. So when you do something different, like you don't beat yourself up anymore, some part of you is going to feel this discomfort, like, this is wrong. I should not be cheering myself on. I should be beating myself up. This is risky. But then you say, yeah, I know it feels risky, but we're going to keep doing it. It's not like it's just going to feel easy right away. It's a total change in the way you do things. If you go out that day golfing, and you say, I'm going to have fun, you're probably going to have fun 2% of the time if you're used to beating yourself up and not really allowing yourself to fully have fun, because at some level you think if you're having fun, then you must not be working hard enough. And if you're not working hard enough, you might not perform well. And if you don't perform well, then other things are going to be bad. So I'm so curious to see what's going to happen for him because this just happened recently. But when he starts to make these small changes that are huge changes, he may find that this wound starts to calm down. It's not quite as red and raw. And you know what else? As it starts to heal up, the thorn might just easily just kind of fall away. And then it gets filled, that hole where the thorn was, it gets filled with our love, with our approval and our validation and our care. And in my opinion, what we all need to do though, in addition to that, is proactively be having these kinds of conversations with ourselves, not when we're in the moment. So, what I told him is that this is the most important thing right now. It may seem not important, but if you haven't already watched it, I invite you to watch the video about low hanging fruit because we think these things, they're so insignificant, I shouldn't let them bother me. There are so much bigger problems in my life or in the world. I cannot believe I'm going to put this much time and attention into my golf game. Yes, you must. This is the low hanging fruit. This is the thing right there that's ripe for you to look at. And you have to make it a priority because if you don't make it a priority, then all the other things are going to take over and your protector parts are going to tell you other things are important. But if instead you make this your priority, what happens is you don't just say these things to your inner child part when you're on the golf course, you start saying them all the time. You start remembering that you have an inner child. Now, I mean, he's been doing inner child work, so he does know he has an inner child and he does do some of this proactive work, but I was inviting him to do more of it, to spend extra time reassuring himself that he's okay. Before he goes to the golf course, remind himself that we don't have to beat ourselves up anymore. Like we're adults. We're not powerless children anymore. We're powerful adults and we can make different choices. And that my adult me is here with my little me and I've got you. I invited him to even imagine putting his inner child in a front carrier and taking that little baby out with him golfing and intentionally thinking about this little guy is with me. We're going golfing together. And I'm not going to beat up a baby. I'm not going to beat up my baby. So that is what it's all about. And I want you to know that this is true for pretty much everything in your life. And if you want to get to the root cause, if you want to get to the thorn, you've got to take these things seriously. And then you have to remember there's a child part in there that's waiting for your love and attention. And when you can give that to that child part and you can start to heal those wounds, things start to heal up and they don't cause the suffering that a festering wound from the past does. So let's clean up our wounds. And remember, you don't have to go back. Like he didn't have to go back and remember every moment that that happened. He just has to know, oh, probably something like that happened. I tell people, you don't even have to remember it. You can just guess based on my childhood and my circumstances and the way that I feel right now. That tracks. That seems pretty accurate. Okay. What are we going to do differently? What was the unmet emotional need from the time that I was a child? What are some of the feelings I might have been feeling? And can I face those feelings? Can I feel into the humiliation, the fear, the disappointment, the worry about being disapproved of? Can I feel into some of those feelings as I'm going through this thing and trying to change it? What would we want to do differently? How do I want to be living my life as a powerful adult rather than a powerless child? And as we make these types of changes and we show up differently, we literally heal the past. That's the way it works. And if you have any questions, I'm here for them. Just post in the comments. And if you're enjoying this video or all of my videos or any of my videos, please share them with other people. Please absolutely subscribe. I just appreciate you. And I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share some of these things so that we can all recognize that healing our inner child is not only critical, but also just so doable. And I want everyone to know this. I want to scream it from rooftops. So share, please, with other people because imagine if you share it with somebody and you really do get to change someone's life because of it. It's really possible.